If you would like to listen to this webinar through the medium of English, if you can go down to the bottom of your screens and select English by pressing the globe icon at the bottom, please. Ac os ydych chi eisiau gwrando ar y cyfarfod yn Gymraeg,
and if you want to listen in Welsh, push the globe at the bottom of the screen and then select Cymraeg. As some of you have heard, I'm sure, for the purpose of minute taking and for webcasting, this will be recording to include the chat and questions that will be kept. So if you don't wish to be included in such a recording, then you're welcome to leave now. Thank you very much. So we can start now. It's just turned 6. I'm Catherine Glynn, and I am the Snowdon Partnership Officer, and very warm welcome to the update, which follows the initial consultation on the Wyddfa and Ogwen parking transport strategy that took place in March last year. There'll be a question and answer session at the end, so can I ask you to write your questions, please, in the Q&A box, not in the chat. The time is quite scarce, so if we don't have time to answer orally, we will answer by email. So the Q&A will be kept for your email addresses, so we know who to reply to. The chat won't do that, so remember to put it in the Q&A box, please. There's plenty of time gone past since March. We're very keen to update you with what's going on over the last few months. This is work jointly, so you will hear presentations from a number of different officers during the session. I'm just to give the context very briefly to you first. So if you look at this scheme, you will see the vision. And this has come since the parking and transport is one of the biggest challenges for the area. It's been so for several months. So the Snowdon Partnership commissioned a very detailed inquiry, and this is the vision that the specialist provided. That is to provide a world-class sustainable tourism office that offers visitors the opportunity to enjoy the area in a way that protects the landscape and contributes positively to communities and local economy. Visitors will be provided with high quality, affordable, accessible, low carbon transport services and excellent information that will enhance their visit while reducing the impact on the protected landscape. Communities will benefit by seeing a reduction in car parking, traffic pressure, an improvement in transport services and investment in community facilities. The local economy and tourism businesses will benefit by capturing more visitor spend in the area. And in order to achieve this vision, then we decided we need to implement the points on this slide. I just stressed and not mention some of them. So parking reduced in the area, and parking increased in the gateway visitors, the approaches, and then a high frequency shuttle network and regional public transport links. It's extremely ambitious plan and long-term one. And as you know, we have started to consult and implement on some of these elements, and you'll hear more in due course. As I mentioned at the start, this webinar follows the initial consultation with the 4 gateway communities, Bethesda, Betsequid, Bevan, and Llanberis. And this included a combination of online questionnaire and also meetings in all the communities. And we got an excellent response with hundreds responding. So following this, these were sent out, the key themes emerged and were sent out, and I hope therefore that you've received them. So briefly, the main themes that came up in this consultation are on this slide. That is, public transport needs to be green, integrated, and more often. longer operating hours for public transport, and earlier in the morning and later in the evening, and to improve services within communities, need more opportunities for visitors to learn about the area's history and heritage, and also need for improved parking management and enforcement with consistency across the area. The work that's taking place since then has stemmed from your contributions, and I would emphasize how important and how grateful we are that you have contributed to the consultation and to this work. Now, can I introduce Sarah Williams, the project manager for Transport Wales, and Amber Kenny, who'll talk more about the work. And Sarah, I think, is going to start. Thank you, Catherine. So the North Wales Metro is, as you can see from this slide, the aim is to make it easier and faster to travel around North Wales to build better links. This will help to give more opportunities for communities and investment within the area. The programme is also a response to new processes of this project that aim to include links and be able to move in and out of the area. And we'll give a summary of what people like about public transport. Thank you for your time. Nick, over to you.
I'm not sure if you're speaking, Nick, and if you're on mute, but we can't hear you at the moment.
There we are. Is that better?
Yes, perfect.
I'm Nick Richardson. I'm technical principal at consultant Mock McDonald, and we've been working with Transport for Wales, the National Park Authority, and other local stakeholders to develop some of the access issues. And that's very much building on the strategy developed by the original report from Martin Hickett Associates. And you'll be very familiar with the problems, excessive visitor numbers at certain times of the year, parking difficulties. But the flip side of that is, can that be turned into a good scenario with sustainable tourism? Certainly what we've been looking at is the emphasis on creating public transport solutions and active travel, and linking car parks and bus services. That's a fundamental principle of it. So in terms of public transport development, can we improve access by train and combinations of train and bus to the area? For those people who haven't got cars or don't wish to use them, there are other ways of getting into the area. How can we optimize the bus services? Well, traditionally bus services sort of evolve over time, sometimes satisfactorily and sometimes not. So here we're looking at the Snowdon Sherpa network, how that fits in or otherwise with the local services, and hopefully it can all be brought together. And also more recently, the Tros Cymru network, longer distance bus routes. And the idea is to make all of these part of a single network that fits together, that enables people to get around the area and get to where they want to be. And in doing that, it is a case of not just rebadging everything, it's about improving longer hours, those sorts of things, better buses, clearer information, and focusing on new services that serve both visitors and communities. And the idea of the bus is to make it part of the visitor experience. Most of the people who come to the area arrive by car. Some of them have little or no experience of bus, and will probably dread the idea of having to use one. But it's actually a pleasant experience, and there are loads of advantages to it. On the next slide, we've also been looking into parking management, and you'll be very familiar with the problems. How can we better coordinate car parks, and critically enforcement? If enforcement isn't what it might be, then people will just carry on doing what they do, which is park irresponsibly and in many cases illegally and obstructively. We want to move away from that. There is potential to make better use of the lay-bys along various roads there, and basically to do away with illegal and inappropriate parking. it satisfies no one and creates an awful lot of problems that we just want to move away from. And on that basis, there are a number of interchange locations proposed, recognising that clearly there are constraints in key corridors, issues about communities, issues about landscape. All those are very much at the forefront of the way we're thinking. And it's about how can we do that satisfactorily, that doesn't create more problems, but actually stage by stage gets to the heart of the problem. So we've been looking at the bus networks, all those visitors arriving by car, how many of them would realistically transfer to a bus? How would they pay for that bus? Well, you just pay for the parking ticket, and that's integrated with the bus. Simple technological solution there. And in terms of better services, coordinating them better, having bespoke designs of bus, so it's not just loads of seats in a bus that looks a bit basic, and potentially electric buses. We're going to wait a little bit longer to see how electric buses would fare in this sort of territory. Steep hills, changing weather conditions. No one really knows how electric buses will perform. Elsewhere in Wales, there are fleets of electric buses doing exactly what they should, quietly and efficiently. But this topography is very different. So extending the hours of operation, we know that a lot of visitors start early. We know that some of them finish late. So are there public transport options for them? Service information at the moment is a bit impenetrable. If you're not used to bus timetables, actually finding them doesn't help you a lot because it doesn't tell you what you need to know. So can we get that information across in a lot simpler way and via various media? And the principle of on-demand services, there may be opportunities there in the longer term as well. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the flexi concept, basically there's a sort of floating bus. It might have part fixed routes, but it certainly has some bits of the route that aren't. And the principle is that you dial it up on your mobile app, and it puts together all the demands and makes a route out of it. And that way it's more efficient rather than having buses just driving around anyway. And it means that people do have a means of getting where they need to be. That of course relies on full communications, which isn't quite the situation now, but hopefully isn't too far away. And on the next slide, active travel, you'll hear more from my colleague on that in a minute. But if you go on a bus, you don't have to get back to where you started, because you can go for a walk, you can do whatever you like. And if you tie that in with bus times, you can have a good day out. You don't have to go back to where you've parked the car. And active travel and buses can go together. Not just for walkers, but one of the things we're thinking about, for example, is can you get a couple of bikes on the bus, so that you don't have to cycle all the way to the area to start your excursion. Might be able to take your bus on the bike. So we're trying to be innovative. We're trying to respond to what people need. And sustainable transport, it does take a while to get there, but that's what we're working towards. Sustainable tourism, reducing traffic, which clearly benefits everyone, improving the visitor experience, so reducing the frustrations of where do you park and what happens if you can't, and all those things that go with too many cars, the visual intrusion, the noise and so on. But particularly supporting local economies, because we can take people on the bus network to where they want to be, and they can contribute to the local economy in the way they do at the moment, and potentially more. So we're looking at interchange opportunities, and we're looking forward to changes this year in the Sherpa network. It is very much an incremental step forward. It's not a big bang approach because that's not possible. Public transport is a big and complicated thing. So we're starting bit by bit with the vision in mind. If we turn now to active travel, my colleague Amber Kenyon will tell you a bit more about that. Amber.
Hi everyone, thanks Nick. My name is Amber Kenyon and I'm a senior transport planner also at Mott MacDonald. And for the last year, we have been working with Transport for Wales, Snowdonia National Park Authority and Conway and Gwyneth councils, with the intention of identifying potential improvements that could be made to the walking and cycling routes in the Yr Wyddfa and Ogwen part of Snowdonia National Park. So what have we been doing? We have been undertaking a baseline study of the existing situation of walking and cycling across the area. You can see in the image on the right that we have studied the existing provision along links between key settlements and how these links connect to the wider cycle network, as well as major towns such as Carnarvon and Bangor. We have looked in detail and taken on board comments from previous engagement sessions. We have reviewed different plans and proposals that have been put forward by different agencies, such as the national parks themselves and Gwyneth and Conway councils. Both past and present studies have been looked at. From this, we have identified challenges and opportunities for walking and cycling in the area. We're now looking to pull together a plan showing how improvements to walking and cycling can be developed in the future. The plan will include a proposed network of multi-user routes, along with the priorities and timescales. The plan will also detail how these routes could be managed and maintained. It will also discuss how wider measures can be developed, such as cycle hire and information about routes and facilities within the study area. Can I get the next slide, please? So what else are we doing? We're now looking at 2 routes which have been identified. These are Bethesda to Zipworld Penrhyn Quarry and Capel Curig to Betsequid to Llanrwst. The purpose of these studies is to understand the current provision for walking and cycling along these routes, as well as identify where potential new routes could be provided or existing routes could be upgraded. We must then gather as much information about the existing environment, both built and natural, to understand if these routes are feasible. The process of identifying these routes will be as follows. We will first undertake optioneering, which is where we will identify all potential route options. We will then undertake options appraisal, which is where we will assess which routes have the potential to actually be delivered. And then we will undertake public consultation on the most favourable routes. If there are a number of potential options, we will look to consult upon these. However, due to constraints and challenges, there may only be one feasible option. So that's a very quick summary, but I'll now pass back to Angela. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Yeah, diolch, Amber.
Thank you, Amber, and Transport for Wales for this overview of the huge amount of work that you're doing, and also, of course, because of the investment from Transport for Wales, we have been able to move some of these initial projects forward. And the communities that you represent, for example, in the Llanberis area, as you know, the next slide, please. We have piloted and we're now revising a pre-book system, Penapass, and this has had a huge impact on and a very positive one in the area. Many more people are using the Nantperis and Llanberis car parks, more are using the Sherpa buses, according to the statistics. 30,000 more users last year than previously. We, of course, have reviewed the pre-book system for the coming service, considering needs of local people. And of course, we're working very closely with Gwynedd Council and Conwy, and also with Transport for Wales in order to improve the network, as you heard from Nick earlier. And as we know, we hope to provide much more frequent buses from Nantperis and Llanberis to help people to make use of a more sustainable method of moving around the area, and importantly to continue to see these, not seeing these dangerous situations in Penapass as we saw before these put in place, and in general for each area, as you can see on this slide and on the next slide for Beddgelert. A company called Smart Packing has been appointed in order to put down sensors on the ground, and all of our car parks in the area, these sensors are going to provide living information about the numbers in the car parks, which will show on an app to us in the park. And in the middle and long term, we hope to get living signs around the area to show digitally the capacity of the car parks. This will help have more robust data bank and help us to make more smart decisions, not just driving around the area looking for somewhere to park. We also have done scoping studies in that area, which shows it's going to be very challenging to establishing more parking places because, of course, there's a huge floodplain in that area. So because of that, we have focused on what we can do in the short term to try to reduce the pressure in the area, particularly in the road towards Gwyneth, and also Transport for Wales is supporting us and other partners in the area, the National Trust, the Natural Resources Wales and Gwyneth Council to work on the lay-bys that are there present and try to improve the bus services in the area. And now for Bethesda, the next slide, we are sharing information amongst all the partners in the area, and we are aiming for a strategy that is consistent across the area. As you know, I'm sure the partner area of Ogwen is very innovative in the area, and we're all working with them to support plans that are exciting for Bethesda and the whole area, with the intention of providing a better service for people who are driving through the valley to visit the park. We hope to show the way in with offers to park and public transport available towards Namfrancon, and also the Trunk Roads Agency hopes to make improvements, particularly around safety around the lay-bys in the area at the moment. Exactly the same thing on the next slide, Betsequid, where there'll be sensors in place in our car park, improvements for the buses, that network, and there's also a new bus stop in place with live information in it. And of course, we're still working to try to reduce congestion in the village. And Harv Jones from Gwyneth Council will say more about that in due course. Another project we're working on with Spark, which is my last Spark, is the way that we're going to communicate everything with people who visit and moving around the area. So this again is something innovative, as you know, no doubt. NSCAC is supposed to be doing innovative things, so working with them at the moment to understand what sort of systems and data are needed to be collected to do something like this. And it's something totally new, and it's been established on the Internet of Things, and see how we can do things that are a lot more comprehensive and help the businesses and local companies and people. And we hope to pilot this over the next few weeks. So therefore, as I've said, and I've referred previously, this project is only happening with the cooperation of the local councils and all the work that they're doing in the area. So I'll transfer now to Harv Jones, the development officer of local communities for Conwy Council, to say more about this. Well, thank you, Angela. Yes, Flexi Dyffryn Conwy, which serves since November 2020. It's a demand responsive transport, which enables people to go as they go, where they want and where they need to go by ordering in advance. It has been financed jointly with Transport for Wales, and it takes place of six bus services that had very little use, perhaps because they didn't go at the right times and to where people wanted to go. By not having large buses running empty around the place, of course, that reduces our carbon footprint, because Flexi, we have 3 buses with 16 seaters, and they travel around the area only when somebody wants or orders a place. And on the next slide, it shows the area that it serves. That clearly is rural Conwy, and what we have seen increasing considerably since we've done this is people who use the flexi service to go to work. It has enabled a lot of people around Ceredigion and Llangernyw to get in contact in Llanrwst and Betsequid. And so the next slide, please. I don't know, have we skipped past the map? Or this one, here we are. So Flexi, of course, feeds in to the hub, what we call a hub in Betsequid, which thus feeds into the network for people to travel further by linking with bus, train, Sherpa, Snowdon Sherpa, the Traws Cymru service to Llandudno, Blaenau Ffestiniog, Bangor and Corwen, and the train, of course. So, yes, next slide, Catherine. No, sorry, I got them mixed up. There's one back just to give an overview of where the service, no, that's it. So the service runs from 6:30 till 7 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning till 7 in the evening, from Monday to Saturday. You, of course, have to book in advance. And when you book in by the phone or on the app, you also get a prompt that you need to book a return journey if you want. Can't just take it for granted. It works also with text message. If you've gone in by app, you get a text message which confirms that your journey, what your journey is, when the bus will come. It's 10 minutes away, and then it's the bus is waiting for you at the stop. And at the same time, when you come back, the cost for adults is £1 up to £3. That's the maximum. Children travel for 50 pence and a maximum of £1.50. And concessionary pass holders for Wales can travel for free on it. And we also take My Travel Pass for people who are under 21. What we're going to do now, in the next few weeks, we're working on trying to persuade visitors to use Flexi to reach Betsequid, to link with transport in order to travel further. We know that it's a very wide area for glamping, camping, and self-provision cottages. Flexi travels round all the area, so you can order if there's a bus shelter within 400 meters, or the service from door to door almost. So we are trying to persuade visitors to leave the car where they're staying and take the Flexi to join the other services to travel further from Betsequid. So that's quite precise, concise. The other service we have at Betsequid is the smart towns. If you can move on to that, Catherine, please. Yes, thank you. Here we are. The Smart Town project of Betsequid is financed by money from Europe, working with Conwy and Halliol. This is a joint project with the Betsequid Tourism Group and the Community Council. The National Park is also part of the group, and we'll be managing this as we move forward. Next slide, please. So what is a smart town? Well, it's a Wi-Fi linked footfall measuring system using free town centre Wi-Fi that counts mobile phones. And so once it knows that there's a mobile phone, it can follow people around to Betsequid and shoppers, bikers, walkers, whatever. Next slide, please. I'm afraid that this is a bit blurry, but this is the sort of data that we can collect at the moment. And what we have here, this is Betsequid in the last month, from the 15th of January to last Monday. We can see from this the age demographics of people who were in Betsequid in that month. And we can see that people between 35 and 44 years old was the largest age group of people who were in Betus. Next, please. And then we can see from this that between 2 o'clock in the afternoon and 5 o'clock is when the largest numbers of people in the village. We see too, you can see early in the morning from 7 till 10, it's quite quiet. And similarly, between 10 and 11 o'clock at night. And next, please. And this is the pattern over August and September that shows the days, the high points, where the visitor count, as we call it, and right in the middle, you can see the maximum point is the August bank holiday. Next, please. So why do we want to count this? And we have to remember this is data at the moment of only one Wi-Fi access point. What we are doing with this project is to give 9 additional ones, 1 access point, what we have at the moment, a measure for on Caichan, on the toilets at Caichan. So it just in that small area where we count, and that's reflected in the data that I've just shown you. With 9 additional access points, we will be able to count people from Pontypair all the way down to rock bottom at the bottom. So why and what are we going to do with this data? Well, we want to capture as much data as possible about people's patterns while in the village, how much time they spend there. We also want to measure if they've been there before. The pressure points, such as Pontypair, where we know that this is a pressure point, and people staying there, a lot of people staying there for quite a long time. We know these days that there's evidence is essential when we're trying to attract funding or for improvements, and this will enable us to do that, to get this evidence. We clearly are going to share the data with partners for use to assist business planning and design. For example, businesses, as we reflect on the slide that's shown that it was very quiet in the morning until about 10 o'clock, so that shops and businesses can see perhaps it's worth opening. It's not worth opening at 9. We can open at 10, but if more people are around between 5 and 6, perhaps we'll open a bit later in the evening and open later in the morning. So this, of course, helps too with maximizing number of staff needed at the peak times. Also, it works if there's an empty shop and a business is showing interest in coming there. Well, these figures are available to show the number of visitors that come, the times, and all sorts of things. It's also, of course, is going to help us all who serve in Betus to tailor our services in the village more effectively. For example, we know when the pressures are on parking, emptying litter bins and opening toilets and so on. And I think that's all I have to say, Catherine. Thank you very much. Is the next slide? Yes. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. And now we have Roland, Bevan, the assistant Assistant Manager of Economy of Gwyneth Council. Roland. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Catherine. And yes, I am the Assistant Communicator, and I'm going to give you a very quick presentation on the Gwyneth Regeneration Framework. So Ardalny is called the Visit Economy. It's being jointly with Gwyneth Council and National Park. As I say, the National Park is very similar to what Toy was speaking about for Bethesda and Canberra. So if you want to talk about the Wi-Fi use in those areas, let me know. So the council has been developing the regeneration framework, and we call it Ardalny 2035. And taking the plan for the framework, we've divided Gwynedd into 13 areas, and we're going to develop regeneration plans for all these 13 areas. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Catherine. So we have defined regeneration as an intentional effect to improve areas economically, environmentally, socially, or culturally. And we hope to develop new ways of collaborating and developing jointly and with solutions for communities across Gwynedd in order to improve these areas. Every community is different and everyone has different features. And over the last few months, we have been doing step one of the consultation with these 13 areas, and I'll share you a bit of the information that's come out from the step one. And step one, we've consulted with members of Gwynedd Council, with the community and town councils, and also with partnerships or community groups too. So next slide, please, Catherine. So what we asked 3 questions, in fact, in these forums, in these areas, these 13 areas, for these 3 specific areas in Gwynedd, where these are the main messages that came out. What's good about the area? There are positive elements to tourism in the area, but we need a balance. It's nice to see tourists coming on holiday in the summer to enjoy the area. Tourism is a very important industry for the area, and we need to take advantage of the World Heritage Site designation, and tourism and leisure industry seems to be developing, which is an insignificant contribution to the area's economy. So there are other areas beyond this, of course, which came up for all the areas, and I'm not going to go into so much detail about that, but you're welcome to see the results on the Gwynedd Council website. We have the next slide, Catherine. What's not so good perhaps about the area? The lack of affordable housing for local people, public transport and bus network is not so good as that. And the number of second and holiday homes in the homes is not a good thing. Tourism is key to the area in terms of employment, etc. But we need sustainable tourism management, and we need better management system for visitors who are staying in camper vans, for example, in our car parks. Next, please, Catherine. And we then asked what key issues people would like to see to improve the areas over the next 10 to 15 years. And these are the 3 things that came specifically, particularly in the area of tourism, to have a clear sustainable tourism plan in place. Better management tourism in the areas need to be clear what the sustainable tourism model is, and the need for tourism for local people, and do more to support local tourism businesses rather than businesses that don't contribute to the local economy. So next slide, Catherine. So at the end of stage 1, as I said, a high level of communities, community councils and our main partners, we have been analysing the information, come up with a summary of the responses and key issues, and the 13 area reports have been developed to feed back to these areas on the initial issues that arose, and also a list of local organising groups that we collected that we haven't yet consulted. In terms of phase 2 now, developing the plans, we are going to develop local area plans And in order to do this, we're going to do much more thorough and detailed consultation and far more people. And in order to do this, we have developed a new digital platform that's going to go live this week. And there'll also be paper methods too for people who don't have access to a computer. And what we've done in this work is to provide details of the work that has been done in phase 1. So maps, area statements that have been developed for each area, which identify the main data and research that's available, and summarize the main messages that have come from the consultation. And then we will use this digital platform to get people's opinions, what is said correctly, and then we will go and develop or jointly develop plans, regeneration plans for each area. So next slide, please, Catherine. So as part of the regeneration, the system works so an area 2035 plan will be developed. This is an important part of the regeneration plan. So the next slide, as we heard from previous presentations, there's an impetus, a need for us to respond to visitors who come to the area and make sure that our communities get the maximum benefit from the visitors who come. And the number of plans that have been being developed at the moment, and developments which prove the need for us to develop a sustainable tourism plan. And there's also international plans and opportunities to collaborate much more closely with partners, and particularly between the Council and the Snowdonia National Park. And to do this, we have signed a memorandum of understanding between the Council and the National Park to develop a more sustainable plan and to collaborate to implement that in the future. Next, please. So this is the vision that we have jointly between the Council and the Park, that we want to see a visitor economy for the benefit and well-being of Gwynedd and her people, environment, language and culture. And under that we have 3 pillars or principles that have been agreed at the moment. And these reflect the priorities or definitions of the world tourism, sustainable tourism establishment. The first one is celebrate, respecting, protecting our community's language, culture and heritage. The second principle is maintaining, respecting our environment. The third is ensuring the advantage of Gwynedd and is they get more greater advantages than any disadvantages. Next, please. And this slide just shows broadly what the model is, the vision at the top and the 3 pillars underneath it. So the well-being of Gwynedd and Eryri's people, environment, language and science, put people right in the centre. Next, please. We have had a number of consultation sessions, and I'm aware that time is rushing forward. So there's a session has been with members, leaders in the sector and the communities, and these are some of the challenges and opportunities that have arisen in a challenge and opportunity to coordinate partners rather than to to promote the area, an opportunity to extend the season. There's an opportunity and challenges in order to change policies, homes for local people. And next, please, Catherine. We have also asked the people's opinions, the sort of policies and actions and priorities that we should prioritize in the future. And as feedback's come back, we should look at raising taxes on visitors, perhaps twinning communities with major attractions so that they have ownership of the attractions. Is Elven, of promoting the use of language, culture and history of the World Heritage Site. An example of this, we need to develop a destination marketing real partnership and implement that. And we need to look at the elements of managing camper vans and policies needed to develop sustainable transport. Next slide, please. The next slides, in fact, are proceeding to develop a strategic plan and hope to be able to approve this next few months. We're looking at new measures for there's been indicators, data. We've been looking in the past about economic data, numbers and spending, and we haven't looked enough at the impact of builders on the environment, culture, and like we're going to put these indicators in to measure these things, and we're going to agree an action plan for sustainable tourism, probably soon in the autumn. Early in the autumn. So this is what we want to achieve, a joint response to secure the greatest benefit of our communities, businesses, and special qualities for future visitors. We're looking at new means of measuring the impact of tourism and monitoring it, and we can't influence other policies where we can. With the national park policy, we're working strategically and ensuring a balanced and sustained future by working together. Next, please, Catherine. And very quickly, these are sort of things that we'll be acting now, ready for 2022. We are doing research work on developing air sites for motorhomes. There are 6 pilots that are being developed over this year. We are going to be employing seasonal staff sooner in the season for the visiting season, make sure that they can cope with people who are coming. There are improvements ongoing for Park Paddown and the Glyn area, and we're also working very closely with the park, as been said, on the element of parking management enforcement and also sustainable travel. We have also prioritised the need for tidy towns and villages, and there's the teams are being established at the moment, make sure that our villages and towns are as tidy as they can. There's also a brilliant basics fund has been established by Welsh Government, and we're putting a bid for that is to respond to matters arise, and joint messaging, respect, plan ahead, etc. We also have a list of events for the register Lambeth events rent, which is this response specifically to the huge number of events that are planned and take place in the village of Llanberis. And of course, the Slate scheme is going to bring in the areas within the Slate areas, and we need collaboration with the groups at the moment, and also develop an interpretation project to interpret how important our Slate heritage is. And I'll stop there, Catherine. Thank you. Thank you, Roland. Now, Helen Pye, the head of engagement at the park, is going to give a few words too. Thank you, Catherine. Yes, as you'll be pleased to know, I'm going to do it in just a second, and then we'll go on to the Q&A. Those who haven't had supper yet, I'm sure that you're starving, but just a few points first on what we intend to do in terms of communicating with visitors over this season and in the long term. So in terms of this season, we have a new website. The park's website is going to be launched in March. And as has already been mentioned, the things like the data from the new accounts will be able to feed into the website in terms of data. We'll also put a lot more focus on pages and information for people so that they get the information about parking, transport easily. We set up a new page on our website last year, on the old website that we have at the moment, targeting that sort of information, and that was the most popular page on the park's website with 155,000 hits over the year. So when the information is there, it is used. People are looking for that information. It's interesting too, we are working on a campaign for visitors jointly with 2 other national parks in Wales. And this is all related to trying to encourage positive behavior and change behavior amongst the visitors. Particularly over the last 2 years, we have seen quite a lot of challenges. And although the issues come from a minority in a way, they are things that we are trying to tackle. We have been doing research work with YouGov over the winter. Really interesting, get to that information. What we have been looking at is the demographics of people who visit countryside and what's the likelihood, once they know what are the rules of countryside rules, the likelihood of them following the countryside rules. And it's sort of quite a mixed picture. Clearly, there's a lack of understanding, particularly in places like rules around wild camping, and particularly in terms of rules about access to land and water and so on. So we have quite a mountain to climb in that sense. But on the positive side, in terms of the parking element, people want to do the right thing. And what we have seen, not just through the research work, but sort of on the ground work too, is that we have to get several elements in place to ensure that people can do the right thing when they want to do the right thing. So we have to get that provision in place available for people. And we also need to get the enforcement element to ensure, and the regulations to ensure that people don't park on the roadside anyway, and that we send them to where we want to send them in terms of car parks and transport. And what we also know, and this is a challenge to us in a busy area, is that people behave differently when they're in crowds. So once one person starts to do something, everyone else follows. So that's quite a lot of work in terms of tightening not just the communication, but the way that we manage things on the ground. So the aim of the campaign will be collaborating with the other two parks, as I said, is to try to adapt people's behavior. And we'll do a huge push to get information out to people about what is available in terms of parking provision and transport. It's quite a challenge at the moment, as Angela has been leading on a visitors survey over the summer and winter. 96% of people arrive in the park in their cars or in some sort of other motor. Once they arrive, 89% travel around in motor vehicles. So it's a challenge, but that energy to be able to change things is there. So yes, quite a lot of information will come out soon. We're working jointly with partners to get all the information there out to visitors. And particularly what we're doing is to target areas where we know that visitors come from. We know that a lot of our visitors come from places like Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, London, and the social media can enable us to target information specifically to those areas and those demographics that we want to target. So it's all quite clever. A lot more work to be done in the long term. Once all the work of preparation in terms of the provision is in place, then making sure that the visitor can find the information is easy, it's crucial. So that is something we'll be working on over the next year or two. The last slide, please, Catherine. So yes, I think the idea of solving the parking and transport problems in the area started off sounding simple, but as you've heard tonight, there's so much work going on and so much data and research that needs to take place in order to ensure that this works properly. What is obvious to me, and what I hope will give you the confidence that to know there's so much energy and passion, all the people who are working on achieving our mission to ensure that Snowdonia and the wider area is leading on sustainable transport. This energy, and there's nothing like this going on anywhere else in the United Kingdom. And we must thank Angela, Catherine, the Transport for Wales team, and for the Conwy and Gwyneth officers for all the work and time and hours they put into making this work. Everyone's pulling together. A lot of work still to be done. And what we're trying to do, because we know that it's frustrating for people that the major strategy takes so much time to develop. So at the moment, as you can see, what we're trying to do is to solve some of the quick wins in the short term while we still work on the long-term strategy. So I hope that this is a help and makes a difference. And it can also enable us to trial things. So what we've seen is that just trying, for example, in Penapras, sometimes it's worth doing just to see what comes out of it, because you never know exactly how people are going to respond to a new system. So this is crucial too, in terms of the way that we proceed to solve problems. What we do know is what we need to do to make it as easier and convenient to people as we can to make this shift from their cars to using sustainable transport of traveling into and around the park. We have a huge challenge in front of us, and if we can be at the forefront in contributing to reducing this challenge of climate change and encouraging people to move out of their cars, it's even more challenging in countryside area in terms of trying to make this shift from cars to something else. But I am confident in the work that's going on. This is going to happen, and I think that the area will lead the way. I think that what is going to help too in the long term is the wider work that's going on. The statement has been made by the Welsh Government that the work is going to happen over the next year on the bus survey transport. This is really important as pulling everything together, because systems are complicated. So many different organizations are working on different things and to try to achieve. So with this survey will be a real help, I think. And so in terms of the wider strategy, we're working very closely with councils on developing a sustainable tourism model. And we're in discussions at the moment on how we can develop the strategy further. We are still in contact, in touch with our communities, so it's really important that you can get an input to what's going on as things develop. And I hope that we can update you further on how things are going after the summer. And back to you, Catherine. Thank you, Helen. Yes, thank you for Helen, and thank you for everyone who has made these presentations. Now, I apologize already because time has gone so quickly, but we have a little time for the question and answer session. So if we can't answer your questions, as I said at the start, then we will be able to respond fully to you by email. So don't worry about that. We will definitely respond to you. So I will just stop sharing my screen now. And we have had a few questions have come in already. And so go to the first one. Well, it was asked by two different people, in fact, but the same question. Question came up tonight too. Angela, I think. Ian Wynn and Ewan Avon Jones have asked about the system that will be available for inhabitants in this area if these transport spleen support work. Also, the same sort of question about organizations to get access to the mountains and the lakes, the other organizations in the areas. Thank you, Catherine. Yes, I realized too that I hadn't actually, if you don't know who I am, I'm Angela Jones, and I am the partnerships manager in the National Park. And Catherine and I have spoken with you before in the initial consultation. And I have seen in the Q&A box several questions too, saying that we tonight have concentrated on visitors. Yes, exactly, because the strategy of transport focuses on a sustainable tourism model to manage the way that visitors come to the area and better and more sustainable way, but on the basis of what is better for everybody who lives and works here full time. And in the heart of our strategy is working with you always, every community in the area, not just the communities that we mentioned tonight, but to know what exactly is better for you and how you want to see the strategy developing. And of course, we can never stop access for everyone. It's open for everybody. So they can't have gates or anything like that. And of course, we want to work with local community who come to us. We've spoken already to the fishing, the Wyddfa and Ogwen Fishing Society, and quiet climbers groups have approached us to the same sort of questions about bringing equipment into the area. Even people, and I can see this arising too also in the chat, who bring horses into the area. So we'll have to have things in place for things like this in the end, of course. And as the strategy develops, we'll come back to you, the communities, and see what you prefer, what you want. So I hope that you don't think that we are going off with some strategy and not asking you how it's being developed. As Nick said initially, these improvements are slow, and we hope to offer a stronger network. And as we've mentioned in the short term to start with, to do sustainable transport, people who live and work here too. Thank you. Thank you very much, Angela. There are a number of questions have come in. There's a question from John Harold talking about question for Nick and Amber. I'm aware that the work on active travel has had comments from the public from the initial consultation took place in March. The work has been stemmed in a way from those comments. Maybe Nick and Amber, do you want to elaborate on that question from John?
If I could, yes. It's important that we do get everyone's view taken into account. We've been working with the Park Authority to make sure that the communities are involved with this, because clearly you're at the heart of it. We have spoken to quite a few stakeholders in the area, but local people's views are extremely important, and we want to make sure that what suits the visitors in terms of buses and active travel also suits local people as well. But if there are particular issues that you wish to raise, please do so through the National Park Authority, and we'd be happy to consider them.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. Another question has come in from Madeline. What is the thinking regarding peak tourism or over tourism? Was there any modelling, and how many people is too many people in the Higgitt's review? If so, could we have a summary of the thinking around this, and to what extent the current strategy is focused on mitigating that issue? Is a question for you, I think, Helen. Yes, happy to answer that. So the two elements, in a way, we have a wider strategy that Roland mentioned earlier in terms of sustainable tourism, and this specifically looks at how we manage tourism. In terms of the specific question, Martin Higgett, what does this look at? The strategy didn't intend to increase tourism, but it doesn't intend to reduce it. The purpose was to manage tourism better. And what we know is if there's good infrastructure in place, then we don't get a lot of problems. The communities can see in terms of over-tourism. And as Angela referred to earlier, the national park where people live and work, it's not the sort of place where you can just stop people coming. So a lot of it is, one, how do you market or not market an area? How do you manage an area? Where do you encourage people to go or travel? And how is the infrastructure managed, the pressure or otherwise? and the impact of tourism on the area. And that's why having the parking and transport element is so important, because a lot of the issues come out of the fact that this doesn't quite work properly at the moment in terms of the infrastructure. Thank you very much, Helen. An interesting question here, a good question, but difficult to answer, no doubt, is what is the implementation timeline and plan? Angela, can I bring you in to answer this question? Thanks, Catherine. Well, we already mentioned to you, we don't have a massive pot of money to put everything in place. We are working closely with the Welsh Government through Transport for Wales, and they have invested quite a lot into the initial projects, and we're very grateful to them for enabling us to make the improvements you've heard about tonight. Then the strategy in its entirety, who knows, but we are looking for perhaps 5 to 10 years to see everything working if we get the investment in place. But we are all collaborating. You've heard from some of the local authorities too. We're all aiming to the same vision. So yes, sorry, I can't say specifically what's going to happen and when, but what I can say is that we'll come back to you as we've done tonight to update you and to tell you everything that's happened since the last time we spoke with you. Thank you, Angela. Howard Hughes has raised concerns too about the impact of over-tourism on the Welsh language as a community language in Snowdonia, and asks how the council and the park deal with this matter, and specifically if the park authority and the council themselves have done independent research on the impact of tourism. Can I bring you in first, Roland, to answer that? Yes, thank you, Catherine. Clearly, a lot of research work has been done in the European Parliament, and the research that Howell referred to by Aberystwyth University. We as a council have done specific research looking at the impact of tourism on the Welsh language, but by developing the sustainable tourism economy, we intend to have specific indicators of where we can measure the impact, positive and negative, on communities, environment, and the Welsh language too. So that's our intention through the new sustainable tourism strategy to get a basis for measurement of this. Roland, do you want to add something to that, Angela? Yes, exactly. We are working very closely with the council on that scheme. And as Roland says, but also this is the intention of this plan, this strategy, and also, of course, the wider scheme with Gwyneth is to look after the particular features of this area and make sure that people benefit of local people who are living, working full time. And clearly the vibrancy of the Welsh language is a very important aspect for us. And so putting this infrastructure in place and enabling us to communicate better, we hope to have a more positive impact on the language. Thank you, Angela. Question for Nick here from Tim Jetson. Nick mentioned the need to discuss the improvement of the Sherpa bus service in small steps. Does Nick have any ideas, plans of what the first improvement step should be?
Well, it's a number of things. Bus services are more than buses, but that's always a good place to start. So we're hoping to improve the appearance of the buses. Certainly, you may well have seen around the area new bus stops appearing. The idea is in time those will have real-time information. Some of them already have information screens. They're interactive, and you go along and prod it, and it gives you the bus timetable and things like that. So those are parts of the Better Bus program, certainly. For this summer, there will be more buses than previously. The idea is to build that up over time. a bit at a time. Actually delivering improved bus services is a remarkably complicated thing. It seems simple on the outside, but it's actually very complicated on the inside. So it is very much a first step there. Greater awareness is an easy first step. The network in some places is actually quite good compared with some other rural areas. The big challenge with this area is the variations in the number of visitors. If you're a bus operator, you know, it's good business in the summer, but in winter, clearly not so much happens. So how do you address that? Because you need resources that aren't used throughout the year. So it is very much a sort of step at a time, taking it in bite-sized chunks to see how it goes down. Yeah, and for example, you know, introducing new buses. You can't just go out and buy one. You have to wait a couple of years until one becomes available to the specification you want. So it's about thinking ahead. It's about working towards a vision and making all sorts of improvements along the way.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you very much, Nick. We have a question here from George Jones. What are the plans for restricting parking, Penna Pass car park? There are very problems if you put barriers that act automatically by number recognition. Yes, I'm happy to answer that. You'll be pleased to hear that we have no intention to restrict the access to the mountain rescue team at all. In the peak period, Penna Pass will be pre-booked. Last term we had security allowing people in and out, and we at the moment are looking at getting a barrier in because of the cost of the security is huge. But there'll be a different way for the mountain rescue farmers and landowners to get access to the site than calling the number plates recognition. That won't work for everybody who've booked it, for everyone. So there'll be a different way for you to get access to the site very easily. So don't worry about that at all. Thank you, Helen. Another questions come in advance from Gareth Jones saying, does the Snowdonia National Park consider the success of painting double yellow lines to prevent illegal parking has largely solved this particular market at Ogwen and Penna Pass? Angela, can you answer that? There are no double yellow lines at Penna Pass, and only part of Ogwen has the double yellow lines at the moment. So the idea that we can measure success on that. So where there are double yellow lines in Ogwen, this has worked, what I hear from our staff and staff working in the area, but clearly there's only a small part of the area that has them. So fortunately, I can say it has been successful. I can't say if it's been successful or not, but the pass, the new signs have gone up to emphasize the fact that it's a clear way and that towing is going to take place if people park there. So they've had warning. Thank you very much, Angela. Unfortunately, we'll have to bring the session to an end here. We about 10 minutes over time already. So we'll bring the session to an end. Can I thank the technicians and the translator and everybody who has made presentation, and to all of you for your time. And we definitely, a load of questions have come in and we will answer every one of them back to you over email. So good evening to all of you and thank you very much for your time tonight.